Great. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We're so glad that you're here, and thanks for anyone who's watching on the YouTube recording. So first, just some updates about the HSA. So we had a great teacher appreciation lunch now all the way back in December. We have two coming up. We have in May for Teacher Appreciation Week, and because of the change of the calendar, we're going to have a teacher appreciation breakfast at the end of the school year as well. So great, an important part of what we do is appreciating our teachers and our school community, and so we have those coming up. Other things that we've done this year, earlier in the year, if you may not be aware, we organized the fall dance. We helped organize the school pictures. We had a fall swag sale. And we also, it now seems ages ago, but the school community came together just amazingly when SNAP benefits were cut at the beginning of the year. And we were able to provide over $1,500 of support to various families who were impacted by those SNAP benefit lapses when those happen. So doing lots of different things to make SLAMS a great place. And we have coming up the dance on May 15th. You'll be hearing soon about a spring swag sale. If you are interested in joining the board, we have particular opportunities to be secretary next year. We have slots available to be a grade representative in all of them. In all the grades, our board meets once a month. I think we're a pretty fun and organized group where it's not too much work for any individual parent. There are lots of different ways to chip in and help. It's in the advisory and in an email from Ms. Dom about how to submit some very basic information to be considered for the election, which will be coming up. So please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else about joining the board. And then we also help with the stepping up ceremony at the end of the year. So those are some of the things that we're working on at the HSA. I wouldn't be a good HSA president if I didn't ask for your money. Any amount helps with all of those wonderful activities that we help organize for the school. So it could be $5, could be $50, could be $500. We'll take it on Cash App or in Venmo or PayPal. And please think about helping to support our work. We, as mentioned here, there's a form to volunteer. We could use some more help organizing the spring swag sale, planning and supporting the dance and the teacher appreciation days, and joining the board. And with that, I will turn it over to Principal Boyle to talk about the budget.
Hey, everybody. You might have heard on the media of your choice that the budget is bad for the schools of Philadelphia. And we are seeking to close a $300 million deficit, 75% this year and 25% at some time in the future. For us, that looked like a $90,000 reduction in an extension of COVID funding. Unrelatedly, our Title I budget, which I would normally just share on my screen, but because of two-factor authentication, I no longer have access to my district account in my house. But we lost about $25,000 in Title I funding. So we took, all told, a little north of $100,000 hit on a $3 million budget. Out of that $3 million, only $600,000 is actually discretionary in any sense. So we're operating at about 5/6 of the budget that we normally would have. That is going to have some changes for next year. None academic. We'll have the same number of teachers. We'll have the same specials. Most of what you are all familiar with will stay the same. I do believe we'll have to shorten the time of breakfast from 7:45 to 8:15 to 8 to 8:15. As there'll be some less climate support in the building. in 25, 26, 27. And it looks like we are positioned ourselves, cutting the budget the way we're going through this year, is that everything that we have next year we should be able to afford in 27, 28, regardless of continued cuts. So some tough choices that we made about additional staffing that we've had this year, and some climate staffing that we would like to have. And if the ride share tax goes forward, perhaps comes back. But I can say that the multi-age loops, the four specials that kids enjoy every year, things of that nature are ongoing. I'll have a final budget update for folks hopefully soon, is that we were still negotiating the budget as of today. So there's a little worse version of this potential. And if that comes to pass, I'll share with everyone what that is. And then if we're in the budget that I had to submit during spring break, I'll let everyone know the details on that. But I think the long story short, we are not looking at more funding over the next 5 years. We're looking at less. And then we're looking at some reductions in the amount of overtime we can offer, the amount of climate staff that we can hold on to, and the size of curriculum budgets that teachers enjoy.
And what does the impact on the size of curriculum budgets mean in kind of like real classroom terms?
So for School District of Philadelphia families at other schools, the school district buys your curriculum, right? The school district gets the illustrative math and the expeditionary learning and the Amplify Science and all the other curriculum sets that are used throughout the district. I think you all know that the curriculum at SLAMS is bespoke, so that when Miss Duenas wants to teach something, we have to buy that for her if it costs money. If Miss Martin wants to teach something or wants the kids to work in a certain medium, we have to buy the physical fodder of that medium. The school district does not give us a cent for the curriculum that we implement, and we do not get any kind of give back. Since we don't use the school district's curriculum, we don't get a curriculum budget from them. I have to make a decision about how much money to set aside. Generally, that looks like $1,000 per teacher for the year. So in most years over the last 6 years where we've been completely district funded, I've set aside $1,000 per teacher. I don't have a number at this moment. It could be $0. It could be $500. It could be $1,000 again. There's still some negotiations going on. But I think in like the medium term, it is going to be hard to fund teachers at the $1,000 per teacher level going forward.
That's disappointing to hear, but I know not something you're directly controlling. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions budget wise. I was going to add, and feel free to raise your hand or just chime in. I was going to ask, is there any impact on mini courses?
Thankfully, mini courses is philanthropically funded, and our dear partners at Pico, I thought, gave us $50,000 for this year, and they gave us $150,000 for 3 years. So Miss Dom has a 3-year, $150,000 budget to play with to make sure that our partnerships with Soapbox and Claymobile and Tiny WPA will continue unabated.
Okay.
And I also want to be clear that Ms. Dom's position is safe and secure in next year's budget and all budgets, as long as I am the principal of SLAMS.
That's great to hear. And then the final question is, I heard that there were cuts to permanent subs from all schools. I don't know if SLAMS has a permanent sub, but I was just curious if there were.
We had, we have Miss Allen right now. Miss Allen was our building sub last year. And this was year 4 of every school being assigned a building substitute teacher that would show up every day, regardless of whether anyone was out in the building or not.
Mhm.
Every single school is losing their building sub for next year.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, Miss Allen's services will end as a daily substitute in June. We hope
Mhm.
that she can pick up as many jobs as she wants to next year. But that does have a big impact, obviously, not having a first person up.
Mhm.
Um, and SLAMS is in the same boat as everyone else,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Great. Well, not great. I mean, terrible. But on what I went, I just wanted to welcome Kareth to the call and offer Kareth an opportunity to introduce themselves. And we were just introducing ourselves, what grade our students are in, and what neighborhood we live in.
Sure. Hi. Sorry, I was a little late. My name's Kareth. My son Elias is in 6th grade, and we live in West Philly.
Awesome. Welcome. And welcome Miss Carter, who just joined us as well. All right. Well, with that, we will move on to something much more positive. The reason why we all choose to send our children and teach at SLAMS is the wonderful and unfortunately kind of unique education that our kids are getting, in terms of that more children don't get to benefit from this approach to education across the school district. But something that has come up in a lot of conversations among parents has been like, what are these themes that our that our kids are working on? And we know, especially as our children transform from 5th graders into 8th graders, it is increasingly difficult to extract information from them about what they're doing in school, even though, you know, we check in quarterly and hear how great they're doing and hear maybe what they're struggling with. But the day-to-day and what are they learning and how are they learning it, except for those wonderful and all too rare moments when they just, you know, whip out some fabulous conversation with us about something they're working on in school. We thought it would be great to bring some teachers together with Principal Boyle to talk about like what goes on in school. We know we've talked about project-based learning before, but we haven't talked about the themes and how they inform the education at SLAMS. And so that's what we're going to do this evening. And we have Ms. Duenas and Ms. Martin and Ms. Carter here, and Principal Boyle as well. And so welcome to this conversation. And I'll just sort of start off with the question for each of you of like, why themes, and what are the themes you're teaching? And what do you love about teaching in a thematic based way? And maybe we'll start with Ms. Duenas.
Hi. So like I said, I teach 7th and 8th graders humanities. And what I like about using the themes as sort of our anchor points is that these are big life questions. Like these are the universal questions humans should be asking themselves, which brings like reality to the work that we do. This year happens to be authenticity. So what does it mean to be real? What does it mean to be your authentic self? And so the questions are really great because they not only serve as sort of anchor points to help keep my units grounded, but they can apply to not just humanities, to science, to math, but also just being in that weird like middle school soup that you're currently in right now, where it's really strange. So like our 3 questions for this year for authenticity are, how do I maintain integrity in conflict? So like in humanities, we read The Hunger Games and we see the character PETA, and he has this big like monologue where he talks about how he doesn't want the games to change him and he wants to stay true to himself. Like he's a perfect example of integrity in conflict. But then also like, you know, I'll have a kid throw a piece of paper at another kid and the other kid gets mad and then they yell. And it's like, okay, well, here's a real moment where we're in a conflict. How can you stay true to yourself? And how can we solve this problem before it escalates? So what's nice about that is how I don't even think the kids even realize we're having these connections. Like it just sort of happens organically, but it is always in the back of my mind, sort of anchoring what we do.
Fantastic. And Miss Martin, from a specials perspective.
Let me go ahead and kind of unmute myself here so actually people can hear me this time. So the fun part about being a specialist is that I get to do a little bit of everything, especially being in the makerspace. And one thing I've always tried to do, even before coming to SLAMS, was to try and align at least some of the lessons that I do with what the students are learning in their other classes as well, so that they're learning these topics, these ideas, these themes are not living in a silo. They're interspersed throughout everything we do at SLAMS. And part of that now is incorporating those themes. Right now, my my fifth and sixth graders, I have sixth grade right now, but they are obviously in the same loop. My sixth graders are doing 3D design, and the final project will involve designing some items in 3D that represent bravery in some way or another. So that's going to tie in with everything else they're doing and keep that theme going across the school.
Great. And Miss Carter, tell us a little bit about themes in 5th and 6th grade and what you love about teaching a thematic-based education curriculum, I should say.
Hi, I'm Miss Carter. I teach 5th and 6th grade math, or I teach 5th and 6th graders math on Team Voyager. Can you folks hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay. All right. I think for me, it's not necessarily the themes. I enjoy teaching your children and watching the themes kind of come out as we have conversations, especially or particularly related to math. Because when people do math, they're thinking, hey, aren't we supposed to do just the algorithms? And everyone should know that math is connected to narratives. And so what I enjoy doing is helping students connect narrative to math. And so when we talk about community, and when we talk about fire safety, how can we connect fire safety to area and perimeter and actually think about our community or the broader community that may need some help with being safe when it comes to fires? Who are the people who have issues with keeping them safe when it comes to fires? I love to see how their understanding of math becomes different when they think about people who are other than people who are outside their community, inside their community, more so when they're thinking of not just themselves. 5th and 6th graders typically think generally about like, how does this relate to them? And using the themes, I believe, kind of pulls them out of that thought process and kind of balances their thinking. So where they're not simply thinking about just themselves, but how they relate to a community and how they can display certain attributes like bravery, how they can share what's just and what's not according to their perspective. That's how I like or enjoy teaching the kids and helping them understand how narrative and math connect. And to use the themes is a great way to kind of point us in the right direction for that.
And Principal Boyle, maybe you can share with us a little bit about sort of when SLAMS was being created. And I know Ms. Martin, I think, was there for the creation, Ms. Carter. Why themes, right? You don't have to have themes when you're doing project-based learning, yet it's become such an important part of the way learning happens at SLAMS.
One of the things we thought about before SLAMS started was how would the day make sense to a kid as they go from one subject to the next. We're cognizant that we're asking a borderline developmentally inappropriate amount of executive function and rigor from the children when they show up in 10th grade. and we know we're a weird place and we talk differently and we care about different things and we don't care about different things than a lot of schools that our kids were coming from and the experiences the kids have before they get the slams. So one of the ways we try and mitigate that is by having things that tie it all together. So whether it's keeping the same teacher for 2 years on an academic loop or the same advisor for 4 years on an advisory loop, we want kids to go through the same themes so that way they're hearing the same questions and attempting to answer the same questions, whether they're in math, whether they're in science, whether they're in humanities, whether they're out on Team Curiosity, so that we can speed up the process of them understanding what SLAMS cares about, what we're interested in, and also slow down how much they have to think about what do I need to know to be successful in one class versus the next. I think we all know our kids come to SLAMS with varying levels of interest and aptitude. And if a kid really understands that they're being asked a question that's not fact-based, but is a problem that everyone in the community is trying to solve, they might have a more successful math class B band and a more successful science class C band because they realize they're approaching the same question from a different angle. That's what we were hoping to set out back in 2016. As we built the school, the teachers actually came up with all of the themes and the essential questions that go with them. And we've had some back and forth about if they're the right ones, if we need to change any of them. I think we're settled. Especially authenticity is a little tricky one. Is that like it was the fourth one? Let's be honest. Like we got 3 down. We're like, okay, great. And then we had to come up with another one. And we're like, what on earth do we do now? But it seems like all 4 of these themes and the questions that go under these themes provide the teachers a basis to collaborate with each other and to think thoughtfully about what 360 days of instruction could look like for the kids that they're going to have for their 2-year loops.
So I have more questions, but I just wanted to open it up here for the other parents on the call if they had any questions they wanted to ask. While maybe folks are thinking of their own questions, I'm curious to hear from from all of you. How did you pick the themes that you've selected?
So when we all sat down together to come up with some themes, it's one of those things that starts out gigantic and then you start to narrow it down and narrow it down. So at first we were kind of all throwing out any random thing that came to mind. That obviously wasn't going to work. So it's like, let's start thinking about what type of school we are, what things do we want the kids thinking about, how do we want to represent ourselves, and what are some themes that we also feel we can tie in academically with what we're doing as well. So they can actually see these themes in their lessons in real life around them, rather than just being some nebulous idea that they know what it's called, they know what the definition is, but they couldn't actually tell you what it all means. So that's when we really started narrowing things down and ended up with our final 4.
And then how
Community felt like an easy one.
What was that?
Oh, I said community felt like an easy one when we started.
Yeah.
It felt like something all the kids would need in their first 2 years with us. And as we started talking in year 2, bravery just felt like such a good middle school question. And theme.
Yeah.
And likewise discovery when we had a 7th grade. Like those 3 felt really natural. and felt timeless, which is also something we're going for. Is like, we can't pick a theme that only works in 2016, or we can't pick a theme that only works in 2020. This is something we want every kid to experience. They might get it in a different order, but we want them all to have that same experience by the time they're done. And while authenticity at the time felt like really of the time, unfortunately, that feels just as germane to what middle schoolers need to grapple with and understand to get into high school, as it did in 2019 when we thought of it.
And thanks, Ms. Duenas, for sharing the themes and the essential questions. I just put those up for everybody. And I see that Katie has a question.
Thank you, everyone, for presenting so far. And Andrew, thank you for leading. I wanted to check in to see or to hear about other ways that that the teachers have gotten the families or the wider community involved in the questions. I think it was Elsa's 5th grade year, although it could have been 6th, that we went on a walk with, because it was 5th grade. We went on a walk through the community. And I forget the theme, I'll be honest, but it was a really nice way, parents were invited, or, caregivers, and we learned about how they were connecting connecting the dots. So I was wondering if there are other examples of that, or if there are other ways that you're thinking in the future to have families witness firsthand kind of what they're working on. Bravery in the neighborhood. Thank you. Yes, that was it.
And that's one of the other really delightful side products of having these themes and these questions is every kid goes through the Bravery in the Neighborhood podcasting project. It's kind of the seminal project of the Bravery year. We decided to stop having it in December. Like, we finally wised up and like, if we're going to invite a whole bunch of families to walk around West Philadelphia, maybe we don't do it when it's 20 degrees out. So that project has moved to spring of 2026, but we are in a Bravery year. That project is happening. I know for folks who've been in the community longer, they're used to that happening before. The community year, the Museum of Current Events is kind of the big project that happens in the community year. And I know Ms. Duenas and I have been going back and forth, and other members of Team Zephyr and Team Phoenix of like, what are the authenticity moments and discovery moments that could turn into a Braver in the Neighborhood project, which has like a big scope to it, and the Museum of Current Events, which has a big scope to it, and I think are also the family-facing moments, Katie, that you were talking about. I don't know if we've quite nailed those yet for the 7th and 8th grade side of things, but bringing folks in for the Museum of Current Events and bringing folks in for the podcast walk, I think are something that we're going to do every year, or every other year, I should say, on the 5-6 side of things.
I think sometimes we're moving in that direction, because this school year, I was doing a project in math about redistricting, and Ms. Manti, the science teacher, she was doing a project where students had to write their council person, and it was nice to see those two connect, because I think that's one of the dreams that we have for humanities, science, and math to kind of connect in a way around a particular theme, where we're all doing something pretty similar, but in different ways that relate to our respective topics or subjects. We had a visit with Jamie Gaudier, who is the council person for District 3. And to think about that from a mathematic perspective, thinking about the average income in our particular district, or the racial makeup of our particular district, and then have the kids kind of recognize certain people because they've written council members, I think was a real highlight for this particular theme. Thinking about which one are we in? Community? I think we're in community, but thinking about community and how we connect as students to our community. So thinking in a broader way, thinking outside of ourselves. I think we still have a long way to go, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I want to agree with you, Monique, that that's sort of like the ultimate goal is like the math, science, humanities sort of mega projects that brings them all together. And that was something I was talking about with one of my Team Phoenix colleagues just this week is like, how can we have some culminating experience, like how you had your recent experience with all three of the core classes sort of coalesce into one big overarching moment. And I'm hopeful we get there. Mhm.
Great. Katie, is that an old hand, or do you have another question?
Yeah, I'm so famous for not putting it down. Sorry, I'm gonna put that
No,
down.
no. That's fine.
It always takes a second. Hold on.
Yeah, and I just wanted to welcome Soniette to the, I hope I pronounced your name right, to the call. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Great. And do you want to just introduce yourself? What grade or grades are your kid or kids in, and what neighborhood are you in?
We live in Point Breeze, and our son is a 5th grader at SLAMS.
Great. Thank you so much for joining. Are there any other questions from any of the other parents? No. Okay. So I was curious, another sort of question that I had about themes is if you could maybe share a moment from your time teaching at SLAMS where, and we got a little, I think, a taste of one just there from Ms. Carter, but where you just really saw the themes click for your students. One of those moments that, you know, really made you smile, that you shared with your family and colleagues, like, wow, it all really worked today.
I'll go first. Relating back to the bravery project for 6th grade that I mentioned earlier, where we're designing the medallions to represent bravery in some way. Part of the project is the students have to write about and explain what their medallion represents, why they chose that as their one of their choices for bravery. So reading through those and just seeing the connections that the students are making, bravery across their academic work, bravery across maybe sports, dance, whatever, extracurricular activities, bravery in everyday life, and just them starting to think about how they can do that across all aspects of their life. How are they personally going to show that bravery?
It's fantastic. Ms. Duenas, any memories for you in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, as like the English teacher, I really love, you know, all the very like deep character study we can get out of these questions. You know, whether it's like, you know, how does this character adapt and how is their thoughts influencing their actions? So I love that these like questions really come alive when we're talking about books, which is what I love to do. Like I love to talk about books. I love to see the excitement when a kid reads a book for the first time that they get really happy about. Like The Outsider still hits. So like that's a thing that's exciting to me. Like how do we respond? How does Pony Boy respond to the unknown when like his, you know, spoiler alert, there's a murder and a fire. But like what is gonna happen next? You know, and like they're weirdly invested in these like books from the 1960s that you'd think weren't cool anymore. But like the questions really help get them excited and talking about these big open-ended ideas and even debating and fighting over, no, this is why he did that. So I like that it offers spirited conversation. And that there's no right answer. You know, there's no right answer to how I maintain integrity in conflict. There's no yes or no, right or wrong. Like everybody has to find their own way to answer these questions, which is always really exciting when every student can make their own meaning out of something.
That's great. And so, yeah, yes, we will share. We covered that on the first part of the call, and we'll there'll be both a recording that'll be shared tomorrow, and or shared in the advisory memo next week, and we can share out some notes on that as well. And so maybe one at least last question for me, and others feel free to chime in. So you three spend all day with middle schoolers. What advice do you have for us as parents about engaging with our kids around these themes and how we can do that?
I mean, for me, I also live with a middle schooler too. So like
Mhm.
in the thick of it. And I know the question, like, what happened to school today? Nothing. There's obviously stuff that happened. And so like asking super targeted questions really helps me. Like, okay, what did you read in your book today? Like what's happening in your story? What do you think about that? Why do you think that character did that? That's crazy. And then like I also try to read whatever books he's reading just so I can have like a frame of reference. But I don't know much about what happens in a math or science class. So I genuinely don't know. So I get to be curious. I get to say like, okay, wait, what do you mean you're learning this in science? What is a secondary predator or whatever thing he taught me last week? Can you give me an example? So just like really peppering him with very oddly specific questions and not letting him get away with it was fine because it wasn't fine. It was something way more interesting, I'm sure.
Thanks. And Miss Carter.
I would echo that. I often send an email to families to let them know when we're starting a project so that families can have conversations and say, tell me what you know about this particular project. See what they can share with you about what they're learning, because I feel like that's another way of reviewing what we've done in class. So, and then also thinking about what your family thinks about the topics that we're studying in math and thinking about in math, I think is really helpful, because even though we're having conversations in class, I always remind students that they have to have conversations with their families so that they can figure out what their family believes and what they think. But it's also good to listen to what other people have to say and share. But I would say keep asking questions. Don't let them get away with like, oh, nothing, because we're always doing something in math. And I would say it's more than likely the same for Pathfinder math, for the Pathfinder math class. We're always doing something. And so just thinking about how to make those connections, not only to narratives, but just to general life, I think is really important.
I don't know if this is going to work past second grade. I've been very lucky with my own kid, is that like instead of asking them like, how was your day? Or like what went well, I've always asked her like, what was the most interesting thing that happened today? And then not judged whatever she said was the most interesting thing. So there could be 3 days of like recess nonsense, but then at least once a week I actually get a good insight into like what my kid is learning about in second grade at Southwark. And I think that frame of like not the most important or not the answer that the kid is expected to give me, but just tell me what was interesting to you today, is a good way to just get them talking as opposed to trying to get a specific answer.
I would also add that the kind of the reverse of that question can also be helpful. Of if there was one part of the day today that you could do over, what would that be and why? Because that also gives them a chance to express maybe things they weren't quite so excited or happy about, and have kind of that balance between the two.
great suggestions all around. And yeah, big +1 to Sonia comment about Miss Carter. We were great fans of your emails, and definitely helped with some of those conversations. And it's great to not just have to be delving into to the depths of Google Classroom, but hearing a little bit about the new projects that are coming up, and we know get those from other teachers as well. Jamie, did you have a question? I saw you coming off.
Oh, well, do you know what? It's kind of funny because I was just going to echo kind of what the teachers were saying, because Fletcher ran up, because when he heard Miss Martin's voice, ran up with what he created in her class today, and it was a wand, and I hadn't seen it before, and it just kind of really just sparked a conversation between us of what's going on, and he was very proud of what he created and stuff, and so it just actually inspired a conversation, sort of just seeing that kind of and just hearing what Miss Martin, and
I also heard what the future project is.
Okay,
It's a secret, Fletcher.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions from parents? All right. And any final comments or thoughts? Oh, Katie, yes. Go for it.
Sorry, I did actually hit, but I did have one final question, but it's hold on one second. Sorry, I don't know what I did with my screen. It's not a problem. Yeah, well, you teachers are fairly experienced in all of the ways of the SLAMs. How do you get the new teachers kind of to really learn how to interweave the themes and the projects and everything going on? Because every year there's usually a new teacher or something, or some additional staff. So just wondering if you could speak to that, kind of how the new folks get onboarded.
I will say one thing that is very helpful for new teachers coming in is the fact that we have 2 teams for each pair of grades. So if we have a new math teacher coming in, they usually have someone who's been at SLAMS for a little while already to work with them, get them started, answer questions that they have. Our weekly professional development that we have on Wednesdays while our kids are enjoying mini courses. That's one of the times when we all come together, share those ideas, and provide support for new staff and new people coming in.
Okay, thanks.
I think we're also fortunate is that while we don't repeat mistakes, we have a record of all the mistakes we've made. So like every unit we've ever done stays in the drive that's shared. So when people are talking, we can say like, that's a great idea because this has worked before. And we can also say like, that's a terrible idea because that has failed before. So when folks who are unaccustomed to what we're doing are workshopping ideas, not only can we give them an opinion about what we as more veteran folks feel about it, we can show them this is a unit that did what you're trying to do, and this is what the analogy to emulate is. And we could also say, this unit is banned at SLAMS. We keep it around to tell the ghost story year after year, and what you're saying is exactly like this. So it's an interesting double-edged sword moment of keeping your trash around is helpful, as well as keeping your successes around is helpful.
Great.
I also like to add, as a 5th, 6th math teacher, it's also nice to have a record of some of the units that I've done, so that the 7th, 8th grade teacher can actually look to see what we've done, what are some of the themes we've covered. So we're not replicating the same thing, or if we are doing something that that requires review, it's repeated in a way that's appropriate developmentally for a 7th and 8th grader as opposed to a 5th and 6th grader.
Mhm. Wonderful. Well, it looks like Miss Carter has made it home. So I think that is as good a reason as any to say thank you to everyone for contributing to our wonderful community here, to showing up authentically and bravely, and helping us discover more about the role that themes play at SLAMS. So thank you all so much, and look out for the HSA section of the advisory memo each week for more about what we have going on, and we'll work with Principal Boyle to make sure we have a good summary of the impact of the budget cuts in there next week, as well as a link to this recording. So thanks everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Folks, have a good night.